Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, we'll be discussing about the command acceptance exception. So before we get started, let's have a quick look at the agenda for today's video. So as you can see, we have a number of steps. So in the very first step, we see what the problem is and how it actually appears to developers. In the second step, we basically try to discuss the process and the solution around it. And in the very last step, we try to discuss a quick tip that would basically help you to avoid or mitigate this problem in your future projects. So without wasting any further time, let's start with the step one. All right, so here we need to see what exactly the problem is. So let me open up my IntelliJ and showcase you how the problem actually appears to developers. All right, so I have opened up my IntelliJ and I have imported this entity mapping project. So don't worry, I will be providing you a link of this project down in the description so that you can refer it at a later time as per your convenience and follow along with the rest of this video. So don't worry. So here, if you could see, we have a number of entities which I have created specifically for this project. And we have a simple entity mapping application, which is just the starting point of our Spring Boot project. So let's quickly run this project and see what we have. All right, so as you could see, though our application is started, but there are some exceptions in the logs, like SQL syntax exceptions, or if you scroll up, you could also see command acceptance exception. Now here, if you see, there's a problem related with the execution of a alter or a DDL query. Now here you must be wondering that why there is a problem with the SQL query, because I am not generating any queries on my own, which is already done and which is already or supposed to be done by your GPA. So this is where all the confusion arises. So you don't know whether why the problem is coming, because GPA is supposed to generate queries which should be working with the database, but somehow it's not working. So in the second step, we basically see why the problem is coming and how we can resolve it. All right. So in the second step, now as we have in the previous step, we have seen the problem and how it actually is coming in your logs. And now in this step, we basically see how we can resolve this problem. So let's go back to IntelliJ and see what it is. All right, and so this is where we left off in our first step. So here, if you could see, we have a command acceptance exception which is coming, and you could see there are some error while executing a number of DDL statements into your database. So the problem is basically is not in your SQL, because why the SQL error is coming, it might be because of your entities. The reason is, whenever we have a number of entities that we design for your projects, that you basically design for your projects, so in those entities we have a number of fields and also the entity name which corresponds to your table name in your database. Sometimes the name that we use may consist of number of reserved keywords which are definitely not to be used by a database. So whenever we decide or work on our entities, we have to make sure that whatever we design here, we should avoid using reserve keywords as much as possible. If you could see here in the customer class, whatever we have used is not doesn't seems to be a reserve keyword. But if you go back here and you see ordered entity, the order is basically seems to be like a reserve keyword, because we have an order by clause in our database. So order is basically is a reserve keyword. So this is where the problem is. So if we try to if you want to resolve this problem, what you need to do is you just need to do a table name and you need to specify a name explicitly, so which basically is the orders. So by default what happens is your table name is the name of your entity, and if it's a reserve keyword, there is definitely a problem with the execution of the SQL statement. So let's try to save it, build it and run it and see what the problem is, whether the problem resolves it or there's still some problem with our entities. All right, so I have started after this change, so let's see how it works. So as you could see that here, after changing the name of the table to others, our application is running just fine, but I think there are still some issues. So let's try to observe what issues we have. So here, if you just scroll up, you see that there is a table which is there in our database, and a demo app product doesn't exist, so somehow this table was not be created. So let's try to scroll up and see what exactly is happening. So here in this case, if you try to see and scroll up, you'll still see that we are again getting this command acceptance exception. So it means they are somewhere again using some reserved keywords that we need to find out, and we need to change it. Okay, so we are not able to perform the alter table, and then let's scroll up, keep scrolling up, and let's see what the problem is. So in the very first statement, if you see, the create table product command was failed. So let's see what the error was. So if you just see here, then it said that, okay, so syntax to use near group where get 255. So it means that we have somewhere a column or an attribute of group that we have used. So when it tries to execute this query with this group, because group is a reserved keyword in SQL, it was not able to execute this DDL query and was failed. So let's quickly open the products entity. So in the product entity, if you see that we have, yes, indeed we have a group attribute. So let's quickly change it to group name. Let me just save it. Let me just try to build the project and run one more time. Alright, so as you could see, now there are no more errors and our application successfully started. So after changing two things, like the one is the name of this entity or the name of this attribute, in this product entity we have changed the name because it was using a reserved keyword of group. Similarly, in the orders, we order is a reserved keyword and we change it to orders. This has resolved the problem. Alright, welcome to step 3. Now here we will see how we can mitigate this problem in our future projects. So here, just one thing that I want to request to you all, that please keep an eye on entity names and make sure that you are not using any reserved keywords as your entity name or anywhere in your entity. So just like in this example, we have seen that whenever we are working with a reserved keyword as part of our entity name here in case of orders, and as part of an attribute of group here in the product entity. So we have to make sure whenever we are designing our entities, we ideally should not have any of the words which are somewhere used as a reserved keyword for an underlying database. So I hope that this was useful to everyone, and please do let me know if you have any questions and provide me with your valuable feedbacks and suggestions. So until next time, thank you so much and happy learning.